Today on Zero to Awesome, I make an entire video without wearing shoes. But you can't see that because I'm not pointing the camera at my feet. These are my dogs. That one's afraid of me. This is my chair. This is my Rubik's Cube, which I solved once and never touched again. And this is my 3D printer. Guess which one of these things we're going to be talking about today? I got this 3D printer about 3 years ago when I started working on my Volkswagen project because I've actually used it to print quite a few car parts. Things like vents and more vents and even more vents and... Okay, I've just printed a lot of vents for my Volkswagen, but that's not what we're talking about. Today, we're going to talk about the actual printer and one hopefully very major improvement that I'm going to be making. 3D printers print with this. Well, this is a box. They print with what's inside of this. It's filament. There's different types of filament. Most of them are just plastic. That's what I use most common. But there are some pretty cool ones out there. This is actually infused with carbon fiber for more coolness. This is a wood-based filament that you can actually paint and stain and sand and do wood things. And this is a rubber type filament, so you can make gaskets and other gaskets. I've only made gaskets with it. But filament is very finicky. Filament does not like moisture. When you buy new filament, it comes all nice and tight and sealed up in plastic, so it doesn't absorb any moisture. And when I'm not using my filaments, I keep them in this bin, which maybe isn't watertight, but I keep them in here with this air dryer. So this filament is just straight up plastic, and it doesn't really print that well anymore. And I think it's just old and it has absorbed a lot of moisture. What can we do about that? We have options. We could throw it away, but this stuff's not cheap, and I am. I have seen online that some people bake it at a very low temperature. I'm not going to do that because that just seems stupid. Thankfully, there's another option, which is both cheap and not stupid. You can buy one of these. This is a filament dryer. Do you want to dry filament? Do you want to dry filament? This is a really common filament dryer. It's about $40 online. There's a bunch of them made by different companies, but they all look identical, so I'm guessing it's probably all the same company. Really simple design. It's a somewhat airtight box with a heating element in the bottom. You plug it in, you let your filament sit for about 2 to 3 hours, and hopefully gets it nice and dry, and then you actually leave your filament in here. There's a little hole so it can come out as you print. And your printer just sucks nice dry filament out of this hole and it's supposed to fix all your moisture problems. Whether or not that thing works, I have no idea. It seems a little too cheap and too good to be true. So we're gonna try it out. I'm gonna do 3 prints, one without the dryer, one with the dryer, and then I'm gonna make some modifications to the dryer and try it again. So let's do the same thing 3 times, because if at first you don't succeed, void of warranty. Let's get this party started. Actually, the party just started. We are printing our first of 3 samples. Test number 1, just old filament, no heater, nothing special. There she is. Give me about, I don't know, half an hour? Test number 1 is done. Time to take our filament off of our little filament roll. Unbox this bad boy. Everything I read said you need to let it bake in here for about 3 hours. So I'm gonna plug it in and start the bacon. I could really go for some bacon, actually. The hardest part about that was finding an empty power outlet. It's turned on. It was defaulted to 50 degrees C. I guess it's heating up, and we'll set a timer for 3 hours. All right, our filament has been baking in the filament dryer baker for about 2.5 to 3 hours now. I am going to take off test print number 1. Not going to look too closely. We'll do the grand reveal later, so put that somewhere hidden away. I won't look over there, I promise. Clamp my little plate back on here. Test number 2 is done. We're gonna let that cool down for a second. It's pretty hot. Then we'll take it off and time to take this apart for test number 3. We're gonna void the warranty and see if that makes our printing any better. I actually have to go out to the garage to get some tools. I'm still not putting shoes on. I'm putting flip-flops on. All right. Oh my God, look at this mess. Yeah, someone really needs to clean that up. We're not here for that though. We are here for some wire and a soldering iron and some solder. This was slightly more tools than I anticipated. All this, and I still forgot to grab a screwdriver. Here's the plan. The modification that I've seen that a lot of people do is actually install a tiny little computer fan into the top of the box. The problem people say they have is the heating element, since it's in the bottom, only really heats up and dries the bottom of the filament. So you've got hot down below, cold up top, not very even. That's not good. So by installing a fan up into the top, circulates the air so we get nice even drying throughout. And what I bought was a 24 volt fan because this apparently runs on 24 volts of power, and I can wire the fan right into this box, so whenever this is on, the fan's a-blowing. So let's void the warranty, hope it still works, and then try print number 3 with our modified dryer. I must say my soldering skills are horrible. My soldering skills, well, they suck. So we're gonna do 2 things to make this a lot easier. The first is I'm using my solder octopus. There might be a real name for this, but I like to call it an octopus. The other thing is I'm just not going to solder. I forgot I have these. They're little watertight heat shrink connectors with a little bit of solder in between. You put them on, you hit them with your heat gun, they melt, the solder melts, so it makes your connection, and they're waterproof, so maybe I can 3D print underwater. Ooh, hot, hot, ooh, hot. I just realized I actually am going to have to solder. I have to connect the ends of this fan to the power down there. So wish me luck. I'll be back. I have so many questions about soldering. Does the solder go on the wire? Does the solder go on what you're connecting the wire to? Why do my hands shake so much? Where did I put my solder octopus? See, now I have solder on the soldering iron and on nothing else. I think you're supposed to heat up the wire. I don't know. My solder is now stuck to the wire. My solder has gone in the tube and will not come out. There's now solder on my leg and it burns. We are reassembled. Whoops. Reassembled. Ooh. Look at her go. And so I bought a fan that blows down rather than a PC fan that would blow out. So the theory is it's blowing air down across the heating element and then just filling this whole thing up with nice, delicious, warm air to keep my filament dry. It has been a couple more hours of the filament drying in my new and improved filament dryer. And one thing I've noticed is it's actually warm on top. It was not warm on top before. So I think my fan is doing its job in circulating that hot air around. I'm going to hook the filament back up and print number 3, the trace, the last of our samples. And then we'll take a look and hopefully they get progressively better. I'd settle for the same. I just don't want them to get worse. It's a lot of work for worse. Last test, here it goes. it takes a while to get going. It's not that exciting. Here is the big moment. Number 3 is done. And number 3 is still a little bit warm. Huh. Let's compare, shall we? I labeled these as I took them off of the printer so I know which is which. Number 1, if you can see, it's got some bumps in the surface, and that's the problem I've been having. If I look at an old print with the exact same filament, it looks nice and smooth and flat. Number 1, adding the heater. Number 2 looks the same. If anything, it's a little bit worse because I now have a hole in the surface right here. But we did all that work to maybe make the heater better. So here's number 3. It's probably the worst of them all. I honestly expected the heater to do some good, but they all look, I'll be honest here, they all look equally bad. If anything, the one I put the most effort into, the last one, it looks the worst. So it's not a failure. It's not a failure because this was an experiment. And if we don't experiment, we don't learn things. So not a failure, but a learning point. And what we learned is these things, even with the modifications to make them better, are kind of a waste of your time. I mean, maybe it's like a little bit of a failure. That being said, thank you for watching the video. Please leave an angry comment below or a comment telling me what I did wrong. I'm probably going to reprint this with some newer filament just to make sure there's not messed up settings on my printer. I think a newer, nicer, good filament, it'll come out just fine. So yeah, keep your fingers crossed for that. And until next time, remember, just don't do this. Remember not to do this. I don't think she likes that noise.